Have you ever looked at your bank account just a few days after payday and asked yourself, where did all my money go? Now imagine someone doubled your salary tomorrow. Would your life really change? Or would your money simply disappear twice as fast? Most people believe they have an income problem. But what if the real problem isn't how much they earn, it's what they do after they get paid? This is the story of Sam, a 28-year-old supermarket attendant who believed he would stay poor forever. For years, he blamed his small salary. But one ordinary evening, one painful moment, forced him to face a truth that completely changed his future. And by the end of this story, you may never look at your next paycheck the same way again. Sam was 28 years old. Every morning, while the rest of the town was still asleep, his alarm rang at 5:30. He got out of bed, folded the thin blanket on his old mattress, washed his face with cold water, put on his faded supermarket uniform, and quietly locked the door of the tiny room he rented. He couldn't afford a motorcycle. He couldn't afford a car. So every day he walked nearly 40 minutes to work. Rain, heat, cold, it didn't matter. He walked because he had no other choice. By 7 o'clock, he was already inside the supermarket. His day was always the same. Stacking products on shelves, carrying heavy boxes to the storage room, helping customers find items, cleaning spilled drinks, pushing heavy carts, standing on his feet for 10 or sometimes 12 hours without complaining. When his shift finally ended, his back hurt, his legs felt heavy, and his hands were sore. But he kept telling himself, at least I have a job. Still, at the end of every month, his bank account told a different story. No matter how hard he worked, no matter how many extra shifts he accepted, there was never enough money left. One afternoon during lunch break, Sam sat with a few coworkers behind the supermarket. One of them sighed and laughed. Do you ever feel like we're not working to build a future anymore? Another replied, we're just working so we can come back and work again tomorrow. Everyone laughed, even Sam, but deep inside, nobody thought it was funny, because it was true. Sam's room was barely big enough for one person. A small bed, an old fan that made more noise than cool air, one tiny window, a leaking roof whenever it rained. Sometimes he placed buckets on the floor just to catch the water dripping from the ceiling. Yet the rent kept increasing every year. Some evenings he skipped dinner, not because he wanted to save money, but because there simply wasn't enough left. He told himself, next month will be better. But somehow, next month always looked exactly like the last one. Then came payday, the one day every worker looked forward to. The moment Sam received the salary notification on his phone, everything changed. For a few hours, he felt rich. His friends wasted no time. Sam, we're going out tonight. You work hard, you deserve it. Come on, you only live once. Sam never needed much convincing. By sunset, they were eating at restaurants they normally couldn't afford, ordering expensive meals, buying drinks, taking photos, laughing loudly, pretending life was perfect. Sometimes, Sam even bought new sneakers or branded clothes, not because he needed them, but because he didn't want people to think he was struggling. For one night, he felt successful. For one night, he forgot all his problems. But happiness bought with money doesn't last very long. Only 6 or 7 days later, reality returned. His wallet became empty. His account balance almost reached zero. The refrigerator held little more than bread, eggs, and a bottle of water. And once again, he found himself counting the days until the next paycheck. The same cycle, month after month, year after year. Without realizing it, he wasn't moving forward. He was simply running in circles. One evening after work, Sam passed a small restaurant on his way home. The smell of grilled chicken filled the air. His stomach growled. He smiled sadly and reached into his pocket. Just enough money remained to buy a loaf of bread. Nothing more. He stood outside the restaurant for a few seconds. Families laughed together. Friends shared meals. Children smiled as plates of hot food arrived at their table. Sam looked through the glass, then quietly turned away. That night, lying awake in his small room, he stared at the cracked ceiling above him. He whispered something he had never admitted to anyone. I work almost every day of my life. So why does my life never seem to move forward? He didn't know it yet, but the answer to that question was only a few days away, and it would change everything. The following Friday, payday arrived again. As expected, Sam's phone started buzzing. His friends had already created a group chat. Tonight is going to be crazy. Same restaurant? Don't make excuses this time, Sam. He smiled as he read the messages. Just a few weeks earlier, he wouldn't have thought twice. He would have said yes immediately. But this time, something inside him hesitated. He stared at his salary notification for a long moment. Then he slipped his phone back into his pocket without replying. He didn't know why. He only knew he was tired. Tired of feeling rich for one weekend and broke for the next 3 weeks. That evening, instead of heading downtown, Sam walked home through the quiet streets of his neighborhood. The sun was slowly disappearing behind the buildings. Neighbors sat outside talking after dinner. Everything felt peaceful. Until suddenly, a loud voice shattered the silence. I've waited long enough. Sam turned toward the sound. Outside a small rental house stood an angry landlord. In front of him was a young couple. Beside them, 2 small bags. Everything they owned fit inside them. The woman held back tears. A little girl clung tightly to her mother's hand, too frightened to speak. The father lowered his head. Please, give me 1 more month. I'll pay everything. The landlord folded his arms. You said that last month, and the month before that. You have a job, so where does your money go? The man couldn't answer. He simply looked at the ground. Then the landlord spoke words Sam would never forget. Working isn't enough. If you don't learn to manage your money, you'll always be 1 paycheck away from losing everything. The street became silent. No one said a word. Sam couldn't move. Those words felt like they weren't spoken to the tenant. They felt like they were aimed directly at him. Working isn't enough. You'll always be 1 paycheck away. His heart sank, because deep inside, he knew the landlord was right. As Sam continued walking home, he couldn't stop thinking. What if that was me? What if next month I couldn't pay my rent? What if one emergency wiped out everything I had? For the first time, he stopped blaming his salary. Instead, he started questioning his habits. That night, he opened his banking app. He scrolled through the last 6 months of transactions. Restaurants, online shopping, coffee, food delivery, weekend trips, clothes, subscriptions he barely used. The numbers shocked him. Individually, none of them looked expensive. But together, they had quietly stolen thousands of dollars. Sam leaned back in his chair. He whispered to himself, I thought I didn't earn enough. But maybe I've never actually told my money where to go. The next morning, while most people enjoyed sleeping in, Sam did something he had never done before. He walked into the town library. The smell of old books filled the room. Students sat quietly reading. An elderly librarian smiled. Can I help you? Sam hesitated, then asked, I want to learn about money. She nodded. Without saying much, she walked toward one of the shelves and handed him a simple book. Its title read, Building Wealth one paycheck at a time. It wasn't flashy. It didn't promise overnight success. It didn't talk about becoming a millionaire in 30 days. That made Sam curious. He borrowed the book and went home. That afternoon, he made himself a cup of tea, sat beside the window, and began reading. The very first chapter stopped him cold. It said, "Your income matters, but your habits matter even more." Sam read the sentence again, slowly, then again. It felt painfully personal. As he continued reading, another line caught his attention. Every paycheck has a job. If you don't assign it one, someone else will. Sam closed the book for a moment. His mind raced. Restaurants, shopping, impulse purchases, weekend parties. Every dollar had quietly disappeared because he had never given it a purpose. A week later, payday arrived once again. His phone buzzed exactly as expected. "Sam, we're all meeting tonight. You coming?" He looked at the message, smiled, and typed only one sentence. "Not this time. I'm working on something more important." His friends replied almost instantly. "What happened to you? You've become boring. You only live once." Sam looked at the screen, then quietly put the phone away. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like he was missing out. He felt like he was finally moving forward. That evening, instead of spending hundreds of dollars, he cooked a simple meal at home, pulled out an old notebook, and wrote 4 words across the first page: rent, food, savings, future. It didn't look like much, but that small notebook would soon become the most valuable thing he owned. The next morning, Sam woke up before his alarm. The room was still dark. For a moment, he almost rolled over and went back to sleep. Then he looked at the small notebook lying beside his bed. He remembered the words he had written the night before: rent, food, savings, future. He smiled to himself. "One good decision won't change my life," he thought. "But repeating good decisions every day just might." That morning, he made his bed, prepared a simple breakfast, and read 10 pages from his finance book before leaving for work. It wasn't exciting, it wasn't glamorous, but it was different. And different was exactly what his life needed. At the supermarket, nothing had changed. The shelves still needed stocking, customers still asked the same questions, heavy boxes still had to be carried. His salary was exactly the same. But something inside Sam had changed. During lunch breaks, while others scrolled endlessly through social media or complained about their jobs, Sam opened his notebook. He wrote down ideas, ways to save money, skills he wanted to learn, small business ideas, goals for the next 6 months. One afternoon, a coworker noticed him writing. He laughed and said, "Sam, do you really think that little notebook is going to make you rich?" The others laughed too. Sam simply smiled. "No, it won't make me rich, but it reminds me not to stay broke." For the first time, their laughter didn't bother him. He realized something important. People will often laugh at the habits they aren't willing to build themselves. Every payday became different. The moment his salary arrived, he followed the same routine. First, he paid his rent. Then he bought groceries. After that, he transferred a small amount into a separate savings account. Only then did he spend money on anything else. The amount he saved wasn't impressive. Sometimes it was only a few dollars. Sometimes it was a little more. But he refused to skip it, because he had learned a powerful lesson. Saving isn't about the amount. It's about building the habit. Months passed. For the first time in years, Sam reached the end of the month with money still sitting in his account. It wasn't much, but seeing that balance gave him something he hadn't felt in a long time: peace. He no longer checked his bank account with fear. He no longer counted the days until payday. Little by little, he was taking control of his life. His friends, however, stayed exactly the same. Every payday meant another celebration, another expensive dinner, another weekend of spending. Then came the familiar phone calls. "Hey Sam, can you lend me a little money? I'll pay you back next month." Sam wasn't angry, because only a year earlier, he had been exactly like them. Sometimes he helped, sometimes he couldn't. But every conversation reminded him why he had chosen a different path. One evening, one of his closest friends looked at him and said, "You've changed. You don't enjoy life anymore." Sam smiled. "I actually enjoy it more now." His friend frowned. "How?" Sam replied quietly, "Because I no longer wake up worried about bills." Silence filled the room. No one had an answer. As the months turned into years, Sam realized that saving money alone wasn't enough. He needed to increase his knowledge. So every evening after work, instead of watching television for hours, he spent time learning. He read books about personal finance. He listened to successful entrepreneurs. He learned basic business skills. He studied investing. Some nights he was exhausted. Some nights he wanted to quit. But then he remembered standing outside that restaurant, unable to afford a proper meal. He remembered the frightened family being forced out of their rented house. He remembered asking himself, "Why doesn't my life ever change?" And every time he remembered, he kept going. One day, while walking home from work, an idea came to him. It wasn't a big idea. It wasn't revolutionary. It was simply a small business solving a common problem in his neighborhood. He knew it wouldn't make him rich overnight. But he also knew something else. Small opportunities grow when people stay consistent. So he took a portion of his savings, not all of it, just enough that he could afford to lose. And he started. The first few months were disappointing. Some weeks he made almost nothing. A few times he even wondered if he had made a mistake. But unlike the old Sam, he didn't quit just because results were slow. He had finally learned the difference between spending money and planting it. One disappears, the other grows. By the end of the second year, that small business was earning more each month than he had ever imagined. It wasn't making him wealthy yet, but for the first time, his money was beginning to work alongside him. And Sam realized something that changed his thinking forever. The goal was never to escape work. The goal was to stop depending on just one paycheck. He planned every step carefully. He stayed within his budget because he knew slow progress was better than no progress. Brick by brick, month by month, his dreams slowly became reality. One day, Sam stood in front of something that had once existed only in his imagination. He unlocked the front door for the very first time. It wasn't just a house. It was freedom, peace, and proof that small decisions can change a life. Sam didn't become successful overnight. He simply made better decisions every day. Those small choices changed the direction of his entire future.